trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there is no Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
We came, we saw, we died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee of Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking out. Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should be running.
This is not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean...
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Fucking thing sucks. Citizens of the internet, I have returned earlier than usual. And the reason for that is yesterday I did this broadcast and then I checked it and I realized that I had not activated my microphone and the whole thing sounded like trash because it was being picked up through my computer mic. So here we are again. This is a redo. Thank you for joining me. This is the same show I did yesterday, but better because you can actually hear it and it's not a bunch of garbled sounds. So, citizens of the internet, welcome to a new week. Today's the 11th now. And yesterday I had a little bit of a message for the mothers because it was Mother's Day. So I'm going to reiterate that message. Happy Mother's Day, belated to any of you who have children out there. And a well-known advocate of mothers once said, Brandon Lee from The Crow, in his Mother's Day classic, The Crow, Brandon Lee said, "Mother is the name for God on the lips and hearts of all children." And I think that is an apt quote for all you mothers out there. Thank you for all you do, especially mine. And God bless you. Hopefully you were well pampered yesterday by your children and your significant others and all that stuff. However, I did learn yesterday in doing research for the show that this quote, actually, fun fact, William Makepeace Thackeray is the man who actually coined this quote in his novel Vanity Fair back in 1848. So there you have it. The quote does not actually belong to Brandon Lee. It was not some yuppie screenwriter, according to this Reddit user, Regular Exercise 251, that magically came up with this brilliant analogy, but a man whose literary importance was second only to Charles Dickens when ranking 19th century British literature. However, it does fit so well in the context from the scene from The Crow that it could have easily been written as an original part of the script. Having seen the movie dozens of times from watching its original theatrical release, blah, 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 this person is apparently a big fan of The Crow. And this week, we're going to get started talking about, the big news, obviously, this week is the final nail in the coffin of your boy, Nick Fuentes here. But the week was jam-packed with news items. And let's start, actually, with going through some of the mainstream news headlines. Yanked from the corporate media of the day. This is from CNN. They're back to trying to scare us with the virus stuff. And, passengers disembark cruise ship hit with hantavirus. More than 40 are off the ship, with all remaining passengers expected to depart by Monday. And I saw some people on Twitter this morning go, "No, they all need to stay on the ship. I'm so scared of the virus. Oh, my God." Ain't that America, you and me? Ain't that America? Yeah, no one is buying this. No one in their right mind is buying the hantavirus. Sorry, folks. If you want to shelter in place and maintain 6 feet of distance and get all loaded up on booster jabs, that's all you, buddy. You can do that. I'm going to pass, unfortunately. I'm going to ignore any media hype around the hantavirus because it sounds like a load of shit to me. But there was another headline here on CNN that was worth discussing as it affects all of us, and that was this one. Let's take a look at this. It's literally going to break me. Commuting is now unaffordable for some American workers. Interesting to note, isn't it? Because the Iran war, which we're totally winning, bro. we're totally winning so hard. The Iran war is starting to really affect the price of things here in the United States, and more on that in a few minutes. But before we get to that, let's talk Fox News Iran war propaganda. Iran issues new threat against Americans. Yeah, I don't think it's against Americans. It's against the American government. But anyway, Fox News is doing their scary Muslim propaganda thing to slowly, maybe hopefully build support for a war that was started with zero support. And we will get much deeper into that in a few minutes. But we're going to kick things off today with America's #1 political reporter, America's favorite Barak. I asked liberals earlier, who's your favorite Barak? Is it Obama or Ravid? And I think a lot of people are leaning towards either or. I mean, this might be a 50% split since Americans love war and Israel. But I want to present to you right now Atlantic Council journalist Barak Ravid. This is a reporter who works for Axios, and what he does for a living is he launders information through the press from the White House. Now, this is undeniable fact. This guy did this under Biden, and I didn't pull the tweet, but there's examples. This guy kind of listed all the headlines from the Biden years. He's like, Biden mad at Netanyahu as the blank continue as the assault on Gaza continues. Like, Biden definitely disagrees with Netanyahu, but can't stop Israel's roll towards freedom and victory. It's like those kind of headlines, you know. When Biden was president, he's like the guy who pretended to the news that the Biden administration was actually in opposition to what was going on in the Middle East, which of course they were not. And of course, Biden was completely out to lunch and had zero idea what was going on, cognitively impaired. So Ravid was famously a member of the IOF and is now a reporter for Axios. And very famous unit of the IOF he was part of, which we'll just touch on in a few minutes. But recently, a tiny Twitter account with 300 followers posted this AI-generated image of him on the cover of Time magazine with the headline that reads, "The Man Who Moves the Markets," which is definitely accurate right now. And it kind of makes fun of the way that he keeps saying the war is over in the press, and that helps keep the markets calm as we escalate in a war we won't win on behalf of a foreign country who controls our government and media. So here's a closer look at this real quick for you. And of course, the response to this went something like this. You're an anti-Semite. As you could guess, the totally legitimate response to this article. Douglas Murray, what is that? You're an anti-Semite. Barak Ravid here says, it was just a matter of time until the anti-Semites come out of their filthy holes and join the campaign of lies against me. The classic tropes, Mossad controlling the world, trying to make money. Decent people here should come out publicly against this kind of hate. Yes, it's so hateful to call you out as a manipulative scumbag who takes information from the White House and puts it into the news as if it's legitimate reality when it's really just a bunch of dick pigs talking. You're an anti-Semite. Of course I am. Of course. Of course I am. Well, Ravid's response, of course, was the racism thing. And that's, these people are racists. You're all racists. You know, like all good members of the establishment press, you know, he's got to use anti-Semitism as a shield from any kind of accountability. And, you know, this is basically just screaming racism. And it's funny to watch the conservatives who made fun of everyone for this. Oh, I need a safe space. Everyone just calls me a racist because I don't like Obama. It's like, now you're a racist if you disagree with Jewish people. They just call it an anti-Semite. So, he might as well just say you're a racist, but that's the implied, underlying implied point of it being called an anti-Semite is that you're a racist. So your boy Max Blumenthal called him out here, who's also Jewish, and basically explained how he's being used by the Trump administration to manipulate markets, among other things. And lest you think this is a Trump corruption issue, we're going to go a little bit deeper into this in just a second. But here's what Max had to say. You were used multiple times in the past 3 weeks by Kushner, Witkoff, and Trump to help them manipulate markets by cranking out articles claiming they were nearing a deal. Each of your reports turned out to be bunk. In the most recent instance, some 920 million in crude oil shorts were placed 70 minutes before you reported the U.S. and Iran were close to a 14-point deal to end the war. Oil then dropped 12%, leading to 125 million of gains on the position. False claims of ethnic persecution won't change these facts, nor will your Jewish identity conceal your IDF 8200 record.
You know nothing about nothing. You fake news.
That was the Republican response to Max Blumenthal's valid points here. So this guy is not just a Trump crony either. This guy is an establishment hack who works for the Uniparty. And here he is, as I said earlier, he very famously laundered stories under Biden that defended Biden as if he was opposed to the stuff that Netanyahu was doing, even though Biden could have stopped it at any time by stopping the funding, stopping the weapons. At the end of the day, the USA does have the power to end all this. But for some strange reason, not the ability to pull the trigger on using that power. It's a very curious thing. Makes you wonder. So this is Barak Ravid, a flashback. Barak Ravid, a veteran of Israel's Unit 8200, who was an IDF reservist as recently as 2023, receives an award from the White House Correspondents Association for excellence in White House coverage and takes a photo with Biden. The judges said Barak Ravid's reporting displayed deep, almost intimate levels of sourcing. Interesting, huh? Almost intimate levels. Well, let's watch this clip so you can watch the liberal establishment press honor this fine young man, this fine young cannibal.
Award for overall excellence in White House coverage goes to the Aldo Beckman Award for overall excellence in White House coverage goes to Barak Ravid of Axios. The judges said Barak Ravid's reporting displayed deep, almost intimate levels of sourcing in the United States and abroad. Ladies and gentlemen, the WHCA is pleased to give the Aldo Beckman Award to Barak Ravid.
And there it is. Big hug from President Joe Biden. Everyone's laughing because Biden doesn't know what's going on. Yay! Yay!
Yay! The Aldo Beckman Award for overall excellence.
I like that song. Yay! I like that song. Yay!
So there you have it. The reporter of the year, reporter of note, White House reporter of note, Barak Ravid, Israel and, deep state stenographer who manipulates the markets. And of course, Any criticism of that is anti-Semitism. Let's keep going here. Glenn Greenwald kind of jumps into the fray here and points out the fraud that's happening right before our eyes. He says the White House press corps gave one of its little journalism prizes to this Israeli operative who runs around writing down what the U.S. and Israeli governments tell him to say, then mindlessly publishes it because that's what the White House press corps thinks journalism is.
You're an anti-Semite.
Douglas Murray for the win. And so Glenn is right. He highlights here how Ravid's tweet says, a U.S. official tells me, that's some intimate sourcing there, isn't it? That the bridge was attacked because it was used by the Iranian armed forces to try and secretly move missiles and missile parts. Yes, there's our secret justification for attacking civilian targets. So Glenn is pointing out how this guy is basically a tool of the establishment, regardless of which cult is in charge. And this line right here just kills me. That's what the White House press corps thinks journalism is, because that's the reality, the unfortunate world we live in today, where the nature of journalism has changed from people who challenge the status quo and establishment to people who are part of that group and instead end up being part of their echo chamber. And the internet definitely shifted this dynamic quite a bit. And we're going to talk about a little bit later how these industries, journalism, music, movies, have been kind of had working class voices almost pushed out of them, at least as far as the main, corporate mainstream is concerned in the last 20 years, which is why they suffer so greatly. But the nature of journalism has changed from people who challenge the status quo to, people who are part of it. And I think the internet changed this dynamic because back in the 90s, say, people just kind of 80s, 90s and before, people just kind of accepted the reality that the New York Times or the Washington Post or NBC laid out. It was kind of like that was what was on TV, what was printed in the papers. That was reality, and it's wild to think about that in the age of the internet now, where we have this kind of. It's a lot more transparent, but it's also a lot easier to dupe people, with computer generated images and whatnot. So continuing here, I wondered when they kind of made the internet a household thing, if they anticipated that this is what would happen, because you've seen in recent years attempts, especially in Europe, to rein this all in, and unsuccessfully, obviously. But I think that's a sign, that attempt to rein it in, the stuff that's happening in Europe where they're arresting people for their tweets, is kind of proof that they didn't see this coming. They opened Pandora's box with the internet, a Pandora's box of, communications transparency that I don't know that they can close. Dave Smith made an analogy about how it's like at this point, trying to censor the internet is like standing on a beach trying to stop a wave with your hand. Yeah, sure, you'll stop some of the water, but it's futile. You already lost. To me, though, you see this. You see guys like Ravid here going, anti-Semitism is why you're pointing out the reality of what I do across multiple administrations, because you hate Jewish people. That's why you're calling me out for my bullshit. I see this stuff, and you see this stuff, and it's very clear how fucking fake and transparently, shoddy that whole rebuttal is. It's anti-Semitism. Oh, see, yeah, pointing out how I launder fucking narratives from the White House to manipulate the stock markets is anti-Semitism. Clearly a ridiculous claim. Only the dumbest fucking rubes possible believe that and take that seriously, right? So I think what's most discouraging to me is that a lot of the liberals who, who get manipulated with this thing too. You see it right now with the Graham Platner thing, which we're going to get into in a minute. He's got a Nazi tattoo. Oh my God, he's a racist. They're using the same thing to dupe you dummies. And because this guy supports public health care. This guy has like language that's against the ruling class. This guy's not pro-Israel. So, oh God, he had a Nazi tattoo. Look, he's a racist, guys. See? Racism. Ah! That's every bit as ridiculous as Ravid here using anti-Semitism as his shield from criticism. And liberals will fall for the Graham Platner thing. A lot of them are like, oh, see, he's got a Nazi tattoo. I guess that's okay. We're going to accept a Nazi tattoo because we're dumb fucking liberals. I'm going to go drink my wine now. That's my liberal voice. From now on, like the dumb hillbilly voice goes to liberals. I'm going to go have me a glass of wine, you guys, because you're a racist. I'm a liberal. All right. So these establishment dick pigs are using this kind of you're a racist tactic on just about everything, to the point that it's gotten this ridiculous where you have conservative hero Mark Levin trying to claim that neocon is a pejorative for Jews. That's how pathetic and slimy and ridiculous these dumb fucks think we are. Like, oh, see, if you call someone a neocon, that's racism. If you call someone a neocon,
you're an anti-Semite.
I want to punch the air. It makes me so angry that people. So here's my. By the way, neocon is pejorative for Jew. Unbelievable. And I just kind of had to glom onto this and say, imagine listening to Mark Levin and thinking, whoa. Bro, Mark Levin. Did you hear Levin tonight, my guy? He was on another fucking plane. Like, this guy is sixth dimension intellect. Neocon pejorative for Jew. Can you see? I mean, this is just top tier entertainment, Mark Levin. Who is that? Who watches Mark Levin? He's like a cranky old dude shaking his cane at you and yelling at you to get off his lawn. Calling everyone a racist. I would love to meet someone who actually listens to Mark Levin in a serious fashion. But we're going to wrap it up with that. And just know that if you have any criticisms of Israel or Trump, or anything that's going on right now,
you're an anti-Semite.
Yeah. Yep. So let's continue our quest here, our march forward, and talk about some of what I think is some of the biggest news of the week. Now, I've always known there was kind of something going on with Nick Fuentes, with the whole Nick Fuentes phenomenon. And I will give Kanye credit again. Kanye did kind of elevate Fuentes and Candace way before anyone even knew who they were. Kanye's living in, he's living in the year 3000.
I hear you. It's definitely a tiger by the tail.
So we've always known that the Fuentes phenomenon has some problems. And there were a lot of signs that what I'm about to tell you was the truth. And unfortunately for the Groypers, the jig is up completely because Nick basically out and out completely revealed that he's a paid operative. Now, it's up for debate who he's actually working for at this point. But he has been telling his audience to vote for Democrats, which is fucking patently ridiculous, as if like they're anything but Republicans. So right there, you're like, okay, maybe he's a DNC guy, maybe. Or maybe he's working for our greatest ally in some level, or, whatever the case, we know that our greatest ally is spending a ton of money to shape public perception, so shall we say, reshape public perception in their favor. So it's very highly possible that some of that trickled down to our friend, Mr. Fuentes. But I want to begin our foray into, this unmasking, shall we say, by showing you the video I think that really first clued me in to it, and the reason why I think that this is the first kind of like real concrete piece of evidence I saw that I went, okay, Nick Fuentes is some kind of a operation. And that was when this past week, recently, Tucker Carlson was interviewed by the New York Times. And the lady who interviewed him basically used Nick Fuentes as kind of like a shield for against the stuff that Tucker was saying. So this is the lady right here. And full disclosure, would smash. I think she's hiding. It looks like she's hiding some voluptuous jugs under that shirt right there. But I digress here. I'm obviously a little thirsty right now. Let's watch this video and discuss it. Tucker Carlson tells the NY Times interviewer that Senator Ted Cruz is more morally repulsive than Ted Cruz, which is accurate. Here we go.
Who do you think is more morally repulsive, Ted Cruz or
Who
Nick
do you think
Fuentes?
is more morally repulsive?
Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is a sitting U.S. senator who has called for the killing of people who did nothing wrong, whole populations who advocated for this war. Nick Fuentes is like a kid. He's like 26 or 70. He has no power except his words. Here you have a public official who we pay, who has actual power, who's voting for things, who's making policy decisions. And those decisions would include, in fact, they are focused on the murder of people who did nothing wrong. And yet no one thinks it's a big deal. Well, this is totally fine. I mean, if there's tape of Nick Fuentes saying we should kill people because we hate their parents, or it's okay to kill children, I would love to see the tape, because that's disgusting. And that's basically what the entire U.S. Senate does every single day, and no one notices. Nick Fuentes said something naughty that I disagreed with. He made fun of things that I don't think I would never make fun of them.
He's a white nationalist who's denied the Holocaust. And what I will say,
and that is worse than actually murdering women and children with bombs somehow. This is what I love about these smug liberals. By the way, totally would smash that lady. I mean, she looks like one of those older ladies who's probably a freak and just like loves to be dominated and has like a nice rack under that shirt. I'm so sorry. I need to get laid. I'm perverted. But anyway, getting sidetracked here. Listen to how she uses Nick Fuentes to defend. Tucker lays out this totally sensible kind of like rationale for why he's saying what he's saying. And she goes, and listen to what her response is. It's too good.
Okay, but is that worse than killing kids?
From my understanding of my own, I was just in Germany recently. And
yes, I go to Germany all the time, and I think Americans can really relate to someone who's over in Germany attending Holocaust museums and writing articles about them because,
it was such a good reminder that the Holocaust didn't start with the gassing of Jews. It started with the dehumanization of Jews. It was language that was used. And again, that is what it concerns
I couldn't agree
people.
more. And that's why when you have a U.S. senator...
Did the Jews in World War II have the kind of like societal power that they have now? I'd be curious about that. I'm not a World War II expert, but I do know that Jewish people today are like 35% or something of the Forbes 500 most richest people list. So it's a little bit of a different time. Like I know like the Holocaust was bad. It was real. I'm not denying the Holocaust or anything, but it's kind of like you can't just keep going. It's like, oh, like the white people that are like, oh, well, Irish people were slaves. Yeah, like 100 years, 200 years ago, whatever. And that's not the same level as like what was done to black people in the United States. It's like, it's a different thing. And it's not saying it wasn't okay, but this whole let's revisit the Holocaust to defend all, it's like the anti-Semitism thing. Here's our shield from criticism. One time, a long time ago, a bad thing happened to us. So, let us do as we please and don't ever say you say a
Member of
fucking
Congress, a U.S. ambassador, waving away civilian deaths as if they don't matter. That's the language of genocide, which results, and this is the lesson of the Holocaust, in genocide itself. And it has. So the lesson for me, really, watching all of this, is that this can happen in civilized countries, in all human beings. There is the capacity to ignore the evil right in front of you. And my point is, it's happening right now. And my job, to the extent I have one, I don't really have a job, but I just want to remind people that we're all capable of that, including me, and that we're watching it right now. And if you think that Nick Fuentes is a greater threat to other human beings than Ted Cruz, I would love to know how.
So, absolutely beautiful case, logic. Tucker lays it out perfectly. There's a clear rationale. He's saying he agrees with her, like the language right now, but it's not about Jewish people. It's about what's going on in Gaza. He's kind of flipped the narrative on her right there, and there's plenty. Like it's just an airtight. Everything he said there is airtight. Like there's just no denying any of that. And guess what her response to this is?
I can imagine people hearing this and thinking you are soft pedaling Nick Fuentes. You're
soft pedaling Nick Fuentes. And so, okay, when you see smug liberal cunts like that using Nick Fuentes as a deflection tool, you know exactly what Nick Fuentes is, right? It's like, this lady works for the New York Times. She shouldn't even care who Nick Fuentes is. And here she is. Tucker lays out this beautiful, like, airtight case. Like, look, yeah, you're right. Like, the language is like, we need to wipe out their civilization. We have senators saying like their women and children are game. We have this whole like disgusting thing happening in amongst our political people who actually wield power and vote on things. And then you have Nick Fuentes, who's a fucking 20-year-old kid who says trolly shit on the internet. And this lady legitimately is trying to pretend that Nick Fuentes is more of a problem than that. And to me, that right there just summed it up with, what this guy is. He's clearly a tool for them to use. And I said this back, this was May 5th. Nick Fuentes is clearly the guy the establishment put out there so that anyone he talks to can be called a racist anti-Semite and excluded from the conversation.
You're an anti-Semite.
And this MIT Hasbro lady who just interviewed Tucker Carlson laid any of my doubts to rest. And so, this kind of this is where I started, because everyone's a Fed now, right? They're like, everybody's like, oh, this guy's a Fed, Ian Carroll's a Fed, Joe Rogan's a Fed, everyone's a fucking Fed. And I'm like, okay, I'll reserve my judgment for when there's hard evidence. And then this happened. Nick Fuentes comes out and accuses Dan Bilzerian of let's read this this tweet here. So Nick Fuentes says the first time I met Dan Bilzerian. Now keep in mind, Dan Bilzerian is running against a very popular pro-Israeli Jewish congressman in Florida. I don't think I've ever heard Nick Fuentes have any problem with Dan Bilzerian until now, till he threw his hat into the ring. Into the race, I should say. The first time I met Dan Bilzerian at his house, he had us put our phones in another room, then asked me how difficult it would be to assassinate Israeli government ministers. Then he invited me to Dubai and Qatar, which I declined. On his way there, he was ambushed by the FBI. Lucas Gage chimes in and says, "Holy fuck, Nick, I swear to God, he did the same thing to me. He walked me and Jake up to a room in the batting cage. We put our phones on the couch and went up to the secluded room with big TVs and asked me about where Ben Shapiro lived and how he could be taken out, because Ben Shapiro is obviously one of the most important figures of our time. Anyone hangs on Ben Shapiro's every word, because Ben Shapiro is the true thought leader of Fox News. Ben Shapiro, and if you don't like Ben Shapiro,
You're an anti-Semite.
Yeah, so Ben Shapiro rules, and Dan Bilzerian, he's racist against Jewish people, so he wants to take out Ben Shapiro, and this is why Ben Shapiro is super bad. We got Willie in the mix here. Randy Fine is the worst between Nick Fuentes, Dan Bilzerian, and Randy Fine. Yeah, honestly, Willie, you see people going at Randy Fine, you see Bilzerian, and you might not agree with everything Bilzerian says, but who is the lesser of two evils in that situation? A guy who's actively calling for the genocide of children, or a dude who, is toxically masculine or whatever you want to call it, and runs around with bikini models on Instagram or whatever. Honestly, Bilzerian, for my money, at least he's honest about it. He's not married and like cheating on his wife or anything. He's a bachelor playboy, and he's upfront about it. He, fucks around with a lot of girls and has a lot of money. And I've said it before. I think that these kinds of people are going to be the ones who have to challenge the elite, because who else can take on, like, Trump, for example? It's like, I don't like Trump, but like, who else has the resources and the money to challenge the political class? And it's going to be people like Trump and Dan Bilzerian and Mark Cuban, or these people who can, these billionaires, who, Elon Musk, people who have money they can throw into the ring. And Elon Musk, again, it's like him or not, he's definitely preserving X has done a lot for the debate. So anyway, I almost got to the point where I said I always thought Lucas Gage was a gay porn star, and he actually replied to this, which I thought was really funny. But I legitimately did think that Lucas Gage was a gay porn star. I wasn't just making that up trying to be funny. Like, that's a legitimate thing that I believed. So then you have Tommy Borum jumps in and he says, "So you told the FBI what had happened. They stopped him while leaving the country. You reported it, and they questioned him as a result, is what you're insinuating. Sounds like you're admitting you're a federal informant. Thanks for your service, LOL, Nick Fuentes." So there it is, right there, kind of distilled by Tommy Borum. Nick basically pulled the mask off on May 8th and told everyone who he really is. This is clearly a move to help Randy Fine down in Florida, who Dan recently announced that he's running to unseat. And I have to say, they must be paying Nick pretty well, whoever it is. I mean, my guess is it's in service of Randy Fine. And we know what lobby works in service of Randy Fine and a large portion of Congress, let's be frank. So, that seals the Nick thing right off the bat. But then, to make it even better, you get this guy in the mix. And this guy is like Hasbro account number one. When this guy is all he does is like glaze Israel and Netanyahu constantly, and like lick boots and have his tongue way up Israel's anus and anything pro-Israel, and is like, did you condemn Hamas? This guy's like the fakest, obvious, Zio op you could find on the app. So when this guy jumps in the mix, and I said this, I was like, if this guy's pushing this, that it's a Zio op, But he says, Dan Bilzerian was recruiting Nick Fuentes and Lucas Gage to travel to Qatar with him, along with plotted to murder Ben Shapiro. Like these guys, I saw Laura Loomer saying that Iran was trying to kill her or something. It's like these people have such inflated senses of self. Like Iran has no idea who Laura Loomer even is, let alone like I could almost guarantee you. Yeah, I mean, people know who Ben Shapiro is just because he's such an incorrigible twat, and he's like rappers and music, wet ass P word. It's my Ben Shapiro approach. You guys think I'm stop. Israel is the best country in the world. Oh my god. Okay. So Ben Shapiro, very self-important. And like I said, this guy, you know, when this guy's spreading your nonsense that you know what lobby's involved. Let's put it that way. Narcs like Jacoby here. So then this dude here, this account, Parody Jeff, great name, by the way, but he kind of goes into the weeds here too about the origins of Nick's name, which I thought was interesting. And this was something that I never even really thought of, but it is of Sephardic origins. And I didn't know what that means. This is straight from the Inquisition Archives, Converso lists, and Sephardic genealogy records. Nick Fuentes carrying that name, the plot twist writes itself. The Holy Office kept detailed records of penitenciarios. Okay, so that must be like penitentiaries or something. Jews and crypto-Jews accused of Judaizing. Surname Fuentes appears repeatedly in Spanish and Mexican archives from 1528 to 1815. These were families monitored by the church, suspected as secret Jews. So just this guy goes way into the weeds on this about the origin of Nick's name, and it does seem like his family has Jewish origins. So that's an interesting kind of a sidebar there. But it gets even better than that, because I'm going to show you Exhibit C here, which is something that I kind of completely forgot about. And that is that much like Ray Epps, Nick was kind of exempted from the January 6th connection thing. You know, he was out there doing real work. There's a lot of video of him rallying people to go into the Capitol. And for some reason, he was never arrested or charged with anything. And that's just a little curious, don't you think? Well, not anymore. Now the Hasbro lady from the New York Times is using him as a shield or a cudgel, an anti-Semitism thing. But definitely curious. Seriously though, how did Nick not get arrested after J6? Has he ever explained it? And this guy down here actually says, do you know he didn't break any laws, in quotes? Do you know how many people went to prison for years and didn't break any laws, who did far less than he did? Why is Ray Epps a Fed, but Nick isn't? Shut the fuck up. They arrested him and made him an asset. So that's one potential theory as to what happened. And then you also, to kind of close this out here, have Kurt Metzger, who I wish I could have found this clip, but it was Kurt who I think really called it first in my view. I wish I could find this clip, but he said on the Jimmy Dorso, and I was slow to accept this myself because, again, I'm skeptical of calling people feds, but the man Kurt Metzger called it with Nick Fuentes a while ago. He said Fuentes exists to get his stink on people that the establishment wants to smear as anti-Semitic. And bullseye, Kurt, I'm sure that he nailed it, because Kurt,
you're an anti-Semite.
He's a real one. Kurt's a real one. Anyway, I think it's pretty undeniable at this point that Fuentes is working on the payroll of either, the FBI or some kind of NGO. He's being funded through some bullshit. He's telling people to vote for Democrats. What the fuck is that? Come on. He's clearly compromised. And I don't think there's any denying it at this point. But what do you think? Do you think I'm wrong about this? You got evidence to the contrary on this one? Let's go to the comments real quick here. We got Willie. All three are bigots, though. I mean, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think that word gets thrown around a little too easily. Much like pedophile, it's like, yeah, okay, a pedophile is definitely someone who's attracted to prepubescent youth, right? Candace went over this. Because Nick was trying to justify 12-year-olds or something. It's like, no. Like, you think about evolutionarily with all that stuff. I don't want to go too far down this road, but it's like before there were like laws and everything, a woman who has gone through puberty and developed into a fertile woman was game in like caveman times. So I'm not saying that obviously I support, the frontal lobe shit and like, we have a society now and we have general rules of conduct and I'm all for that. We've evolved past the caveman times clearly, but I'm just saying, there's a difference between like a pedophile is a sick person who's attracted to prepubescent kids that are not adults yet. Like once you pass that puberty mark, biologically, not mentally, but biologically, you're an adult. So you're at least a fertile member of the human race. Anyway, let's talk about communism because communism is scary. Don't you think? I need to use that more. That's this dramatic. Americans are the most propagandized country in the world. America is the most propagandized country in the world. Let's be honest. And a great example of this is how people view communism. Every time I say communism, communism killed zillions of people. What they neglect to tell you when they tell you communism, a zillion people died of starvation under communism, you guys. A zillion people. What they forget to tell you is that's because capitalism blockaded the country and wouldn't allow them to get any food. You know what I mean? It's like it's not like Lenin killed a zillion people. It's like, no, the rest of the world aligned against communism and was like, don't send them any food. Let them all die. Is kind of how it works. And there's this World War II era propaganda about this stuff that the nice people on TV have been telling us, since that communism killed all these people. And a lot of these people are kind of mentally trapped in the 1980s still, where, Reagan was president and America was the best, number one all the time. And it's like things have kind of changed a little bit since those times, Been a lot of wars, a lot of bleeding of the American economy since then. From Iraq 1, Iraq 2, Afghanistan 1, Afghanistan 2, Syria, Libya. I could keep going, but let's just jump to Iran. But you have rubes like this dude, Giannis, who's a comedian, who says things like this. Communism is the best at preventing illegal immigration because nobody wants to go there. America, fuck yeah!
I like that song. Yay!
Yeah, so I have nothing against this guy. I'm sure like he's been a comedian for a very long time, so props to him. But this is a little it's easy to make a comment like this, I think, when you kind of have skated comfortably through life in a way that a lot of people haven't, and no disrespect to him again, like he earned what he got. I'm not saying that he didn't earn his career and all that, but what I am saying is that's kind of a mediocre thought process. I think this was really true maybe like 40 years ago, but maybe in like the 80s and 90s. But have you seen China lately? I mean, look at this. Look at this. Hold on. Let's just real quick. Let's just take a sidebar here. Look at this. This is China. Turn that music off so I don't get screen grab. But look at that. That's communism's not looking so bad, my guy. Compared to, I should pull up a photo of downtown Los Angeles now, so you can compare. Yeah, so that's China. Anyway, I'm not going to fuck with the downtown LA thing because there's a lot of nuance to that. But America could look like that if we weren't such rubes. So anyway, let's keep going here. This guy clearly hasn't been to China. And unfortunately, the stats are also not in his favor. This is a tweet from Nick at RBN. Americans are leaving the USA in record numbers, according to the WSJ. This article is from February of this year. And that's a decent chunk of people, 180K. Unfortunately for Americans, we're not as kick-ass as we think we are anymore. And this guy did a breakdown of how much more sophisticated China is than the United States that I'm going to show you. But first, I wanted to show you how I believe this post is being suppressed, because in my feed, it said this post was unavailable, and I had to kind of click in. And, this could have just been an error on the part of Twitter, but it always makes me curious when I see stuff like this. Are they suppressing this? I don't know. But let's take a look at it real quick.
Yeah, so today's example of what happens when you don't incinerate money on defense spending or what have you. China just completed the Chongqing East Railway Station this month. This is 1.2 million square meters and took 3 years to complete. Do you know how fast that is? We cannot even repair potholes on La Brea in that time. Bro, are you seeing this? 15 rail lines, 29 stations, hotel, mall, and airport check-in because it's near the airport, I think. This cost them $1.8 billion. Do you know how much we sent to Argentina last year to bail them out of an economic recession? We sent them $40 billion. We don't have enough.
Also, as you're going to see later, the cost of the Iran war, $1.2 billion per day.
Money for high-speed rail. We don't have enough money for SNAP benefits. Meanwhile, China is building vacuum-sealed high-speed rail because regular high-speed rail is just not fast enough anymore. I don't care. Argue with the wall about the economics and the social structure, whatever. I don't care. I would rather be crying in a high-speed rail car pulling out of this station on my way to my $7 doctor's appointment than the shithole we live in now.
So, as you can see, communism is very scary. But this got me thinking about, Americans are leaving. U.S. citizens have been leaving the USA at 3 times the rate as Chinese citizens for 2 decades as a percentage of the population. So now U.S. immigration is just skyrocketing. Well, this also got me thinking, if Americans are leaving, where are they going? And it turns out they're not going to China. They're not going anywhere communist. They're going to Portugal, ranked as the top destination that Americans intended to move to, often cited as the number one choice for expats seeking to leave the U.S. Other top destinations in 2025 included Mexico, Canada, Spain, and Italy, driven by lower living costs, tax incentives, and lifestyle shifts. Key trends for 2025 American migration choices. We talked about key drivers. Estimated 150 to 180,000 Americans relocated, driven by rising costs in the U.S., tax efficiency, and the rise of remote work. Rising interest. Interest has grown in the Big Four. Most desired. A survey of over 100,000 Americans found that Portugal was the top country. Now, I happen to know someone who immigrated to Portugal. And a lot of the people, their drug laws are a big part of that because they decriminalize drugs there. So it's kind of, you can live free. It's a lot more free than the United States. And it's not communist, but it's a lot more socialist than the United States is. So this is also from Google AI. Portugal is not a socialist state in the classic sense of government ownership of the means of production, but rather a democratic capitalist country with a strong social safety net. While historically influenced by a socialist party and constitution, the country operates under a market economy. Key aspects of Portugal's economic political landscape. The country's been largely dominated by the center-left Socialist Party and the center-right Social Democratic Party. Shifting power. As of 2024-2026 period, the political landscape shifted to the right, ending previous socialist decade, creating a more fragmented, conservative-leaning government. Now, Portugal, I'm going to warn you right now, get those Americans in fucking line. They're clearly turning your government right-wing. Don't let Americans come in and fuck your country up, Portugal. It sounds like they're already doing it. Fucking Americans, stop it. You don't get to go ruin Portugal too, you assholes. I'm sorry. Anyway, stop turning other countries right-wing and ruining them, America. But let's keep going here because there's another reason that you need to be scared of communism. In China, government reps who lie, cheat, and steal from the public are hanged, which is why the U.S. is degenerating into third world feudalism, and their cities look like what I just showed you. But let's read this really quick. In recent months, China has carried out several high-profile executions of business figures and former officials as part of a severe and ongoing crackdown on financial corruption and transnational organized crime. Financial corruption and bribery. China frequently uses capital punishment to address particularly severe economic crimes that cause significant loss to the state. And then they go on to list a guy in 2025, former general manager of International Holdings, was executed for taking bribes totaling roughly 157 million. Lai Xiaomin in 2021, former chairman of China Rong Asset Management, 235 million, committing bigamy. So that right there, friends, is why communism is scary, because they execute people who rob the public. Interesting concept, isn't it? Let's keep going, though. It's time to talk about your boy and everyone's boy, Christian Smalls. Christian Smalls is a legitimate activist. Actually, hold on one second. I forgot something. I forgot to show you this before we move on to Christian Smalls. We must discuss this. Last piece of freedom data from the United States. I got ahead of myself here. So when we talk about communism and China and freedom and liberty and all this shit, let's read this right here, because this is a real piece of liberty for you. This is one of those things that really just makes America, fuck yeah! The United States has the largest prison population on earth, not per capita, total. More people in cages than China, more than Russia, more than every authoritarian state it condemns in its annual human rights reports. 1.8 million people, disproportionately black, disproportionately poor, disproportionately from the zip codes with the worst schools, the fewest jobs, the most abandoned infrastructure. This is presented as a criminal justice system. It functions as a labor system. Prison labor, paid between 13 cents and $1.15 an hour in most states, produces goods for McDonald's, Walmart, Victoria's Secret, Whole Foods, and it's in the United States military. The 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, contains an exception clause, except as punishment for crime. That exception has never been closed. It has been expanded. The plantation did not disappear. It received a different name and a legal foundation. And that, my friends, is why you got to say,
Coming again to save the motherfucking day, yeah. America, fuck yeah.
I got to let that sample play all the way through because then it cuts in.
America, fuck yeah.
I'll play another one like this.
America, fuck yeah. Coming.
I've never seen anything like it. I've seen a lot of bad ones. I've gone to a lot of hurricanes, a lot of tornadoes. I've never seen anything like this. This is a bad one.
I like that song. Yay!
So it's easy to suck your own American dick when you're a marginally successful comedian with a nice house and family and go, communism's bad. But the country's kind of a third world feudal state. And I don't know if you're kind of right on the edge. You're still a serf if you're a comedian. You're not a lord, basically, in the feudal system. So let's talk about Christian Smalls now. Christian Smalls is a legitimate a legitimate progressive activist, a legitimate man. And the Democratic Party is a barrel of warm clown shit. And every once in a while, they have to come out in public and remind us of that. And when I say a barrel of warm clown shit, if you've ever picked up dog shit, there's sometimes it gets hardened and it's like crusty. I'm talking about like the warm, fresh, stinky dog shit. That's the Democratic Party's a barrel full of that kind of clown shit. It's like still kind of warm and soft and arid and gross. That's the Democrats. Absolutely. That just a big barrel full of that type of shit is that's how I would describe the Democratic Party in 2026. I think it's about as accurate as it gets. Now, every once in a while, maybe it's like the cycles of the moon or something, they have to come out and remind us that they are that. And they just did that recently with Christian Smalls here, who is an activist famously fired from Amazon for attempting to unionize. He's also arrested by Israel recently and held captive for months as part of a Gaza flotilla. So the guy actually has real credibility. And his most recent act of protest was a bridge too far for brunch liberals because he protested the beloved Met Gala. Oh my God, the Met Gala. But there's a legitimate connection this year between the Met Gala and Smalls' activism. So I'm just going to let him speak on this, and you're going to listen. We're both going to listen. Check this out. Here is Christian Smalls explaining why he protested the Met Gala.
Be arrested. I came to disrupt. I did not come to just hold a sign and walk around because that's what they allow us to do.
2022, Chris Smalls helped organize first Amazon union in the U.S., but Amazon has refused to negotiate with the union despite the U.S. government ordering them to. Smalls was arrested protesting at the Met Gala, which Jeff Bezos spent $10 million on and co-chaired.
To connect the dots, of course, with Amazon refusing to negotiate a contract with the union I helped create, and for Jeff Bezos to come to town and party with the elites and celebrities. This was an opportunity to definitely spread awareness about that. Secondly was, of course, the investment of the billions of dollars into genocide to target and surveil and kill innocent Palestinians.
Amazon provides AI tech and cloud storage services to our greatest allies' military.
Billionaires partying, celebrities partying when there's so much poverty. I think right now it's very dystopian. It's a huge disconnect from what's actually going on in society. These are some of the richest folks in the world. They don't become rich without exploitation, and that's a class of people.
In 2025, our greatest allies' forces arrested Smalls as he sailed in Gaza. He reported physical racist abuse while in their custody. Days before the Met Gala, the forces raided another Gaza flotilla, abducting around.
They're claiming the entire Mediterranean Sea, basically. These are just things that remind us what Palestinians are going through for almost 80 years. And we have to do something about it now, because we do have an opportunity to shine a bright light on the apartheid law that is just, once again, breaking international law. Now is the time for people to come together and use our strongest weapon. And our strongest weapon is withholding our labor.
So this right here is why Christian is persona non grata in the Democratic Party, because he's actually doing something to the organization that funds the Democratic Party. So let's get into this. After being arrested recently for protesting at the Met Gala, indie reporter Jessica Burbank tweeted this out. Big thank you to AOC and her team who helped locate where Christian was being detained this morning. It means a lot to have a member of Congress spring into action and support with this with a moment's notice. Christian chimes in. He says, that's my team that found me. Definitely don't want to give that credit to AOC. Haven't heard from her in 4 years since we unionized. So one of AOC's stands then jumps into the mix here. I call this a DNC fluffer account, a white knight, and he attacks Smalls in defense of AOC, calling him a celebrity activist, as if AOC in her tax the rich dress isn't some performative nonsense celebrity activist clown shit. She does zero of political relevance, just performative theatrical bullshit. So he says, why would AOC reach out to you? You were sued out of ALU leadership years ago. You're a celebrity activist. That's great. AOC doesn't need to kiss your feet. And he's like, I'm a fired Amazon worker. Secondly, you're just wrong. I never ran for re-election because I didn't want. Suing for elections didn't help. I didn't want to. Suing for elections didn't help bring Amazon to the table. Stop believing clickbait. And he crams all this together because he's trying to fit it into one tweet. Lastly, don't give a damn about a politician, not my savior. So then this guy leaks DMs. I don't care about saviors, but I did dislike it when people trash the few pro-labor politicians we have, especially over personal grievances. I'll ask you again, why would he? He says, fuck AOC. How about that? And the ratio here tells the entire story. Look at the amount of likes and retweets on Small's tweet versus this AOC DNC fluffer account. But this guy, then this takes a really nasty turn. And again, the Democrats show you who they really are. He leaks DMs from Smalls and tries to smear him because he called himself the biggest labor leader in the world. And I asked this little weenie who's bigger than him, but I never got a response, because honestly, right now, who is bigger than him? I don't think he's saying that out of like egocentrism, like I'm the biggest, look at me, yeah, bitch, I'm the biggest. I think he's saying that because it's the truth. Like who name another labor activist in the world right now? Name another one. Who? And if they're bigger than him, I'll concede I'm wrong, but no one really answered that question. So, Smalls attacked the sacred Met Gala. And of course, all these brunch liberal cunts are upset about it because he's exposing how fake they are. So Nick from RBN chimes in. He says, Chris was just brutalized and jailed for protesting, but he has this AOC simp harassing him on the timeline and in DMs and then leaking them. Typical DSA behavior. But what integrity can you expect from someone who deflects from AOC's actual record of supporting genocide and war criminals? So Nick calls these guys out and again, it just shows you who the Democrats really are. But just to hammer that point down like a nice little nail, I want to show you this tweet from Caitlin Johnstone recently, because Caitlin shows you what the Democrats' 2024 platform was. The actual official 2024 Democratic platform accused Trump of fecklessness and weakness for failing to go to war with Iran during his first term. Kamala Harris labeled Iran the #1 enemy of the United States. In their 2024 debate, Harris repeatedly slammed Trump for being too soft on America's enemies and announced that she will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. There was no plan for avoiding this. Your people wanted this war as much as Trump and his handlers did. That's why they're doing nothing right now. And that, folks, is the key factor right there. What are the Democrats doing right now? Nothing of note. Going along with it. Here it is, and here's the receipts that Caitlin brought to the table.
About each. Most recently, I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. And look, I mean, Iran has American blood on their hands, okay? And what we saw in terms of just this attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles, what we need to do to ensure...
What we need to do? Listen to that Obama cadence. What we need to do?
What we need to do to ensure that...
So anyway... Make no mistake about who the Democrats are. They are as imperialistic and piggish as the Republicans. Kate lays out with all the receipts here. You know, a real left is more aligned right now with Marjorie Taylor Greene than AOC, just to show you how right-wing the Democrats are. And just to kind of give you an example of what actual left activism looks like next to Christian Smalls, here is footage of Medea Benjamin and her crew at Code Pink protesting war at the State Department. She's giving Maria Corina Machado, the Juan Guaido of Venezuela, an award for the Monroe Doctrine for supporting the sanctions.
That have been starving the people of Venezuela. This is done. Congratulations for supporting U.S. hegemony.
This guy gets up and protests in Spanish. You got this guy.
You ask for your country to get bombed. It gets bombed. You get to...
That's big applause to the folks at Code Pink for that. That's real left activism right there. And then back to the real Democrats, you have Ed Krasenstein. I said actual DNC takes. Ed Krasenstein here glazing Marco Rubio. I know I'll get some hate for this, and I don't like his politics, but I'd at least sleep well at night if Rubio was in charge instead of Trump or Vance. Oh my God.
I like that song. Yay!
Neocons. Oh, wait. You can't say neocon because if you say neocon, I can't get my screen to scroll upward anymore. I'm gonna have to look at this. There it goes. Yeah, there's something wrong with StreamYard it's really bothering me. There it goes. I guess you can. Oh, okay. So I'm just messing with StreamYard here, not to sidebar you guys. I'm sorry about this, but it gets hard for me to get up here and play my clips. You know, I have these little clips up here like this one.
Oh, joy of joy! Oh, joy!
That was from when they were running on Joy. But anyway, back to our presentation here. If I can see now, I can't get back down to my sounds. What the hell? Well, let's remove this from the stage here. I have this interesting dynamic where it's not letting me scroll up and down my sidebar over here. I hate StreamYard sometimes. One second. All right. Anyway, let's keep going. So glazing Rubio, back to reality. Here's what actually happens when, Democrats are in charge. I'm old enough to remember each of the blue presidents in my lifetime having unified majorities. We got NAFTA, Romney Care, bank bailouts, the crime bill, tech subsidies, PPP loan forgiveness, and the wealthy, and a bunch of other right-wing priorities out of it. And that's what you get when the Democrats are in charge. It's like you get right-wing policy with a friendly headline slapped on it. Bob Dole's healthcare plan becomes Obamacare. A nice sugar coating added to the horse shit so liberals will swallow it. And just like the Dems with a purpose coating that they've got Hassan Piker out here trying to sell to the youth, they'll swallow, Dems will swallow huge piles of clown shit like Alyssa Slotkin and Josh Shapiro. So here is Hassan out here selling the Democratic Party again.
Speaking of free AI content, so thank you. Hope it was
Sorry, this is the wrong.
Sorry, Marie.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I pasted the wrong. Here's Hassan Piker, the new savior of the Democratic Party, sheepdogging on behalf of the DNC.
For far too long, we've been told you have to vote for harm reduction. We all know the Republicans are corrupt. We all know that they're monsters, they're racist, they traffic in hatred. But we are here to say we are no longer going to vote for do-nothing Democrats either. We're voting for Democrats with a purpose. For far too long, we've been told you have to vote for harm reduction. We all know the Republicans are.
We're what?
We're voting for Democrats.
Say that again, Hassan.
We're voting for Democrats.
One more time.
We're voting for Democrats.
Hassan telling you what's going on here. You're voting for Democrats. Democrats with a purpose. But what kind of purpose? This is Democrats with a purpose. And that, of course, is a mass grave for full of Palestinian body bags. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris smiling in front of it. They are Democrats with a purpose. But let's not close this out without the very beautiful and artful summary here by Motorcycle Jesus of what the modern Democratic Party actually is right here. Bro wants a strong Democratic Party. We have to choose blue greatest ally, not red greatest ally, people. And this is just chef's kiss, perfect view of what the Democratic Party is today. And of course,
you're an anti-Semite,
as we well know. So let's move on to another area where the Democrats are, of course, being ridiculous. And that is Graham Platner. So we finally found an issue where far-right dick pigs and leftists can agree completely. And that is Graham Platner's tattoo, which he got covered because, he didn't want to upset anyone. But you can call an anti-APAC, you want to call an anti-APAC candidate a Nazi over a vague tattoo. That's what Democrats are trying to do. Democratic shills, DNC shills, to the point where they're aligned with Tom Cotton. And you know there's a party going on when you're aligned with Tom Cotton, right? Am I right about that? Unfortunately, I can't get to my soundboard. There has to be a way. There has to be a way I can get to my soundboard, guys. I will not accept this. Hold on 1 second. We're back. I'm not even going to fuck with it. I can't. Basically, what happened is I can't. My StreamYard locked on the side, so I can't scroll to any of my shit. It's so weird. It fucking bothers me. Fuck you, StreamYard. Like, I pay good money for StreamYard, and it does this kind of shit where it's just frozen. I can't even scroll on my little media sidebar, and I change it. It won't let me do anything. It's annoying. Let me see if I can scroll. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. Maybe that'll do it. There we go.
Well, fuck you, Kyle. I don't want to go to your faggy birthday party anyway. I'd rather hang out at home than have to be around you and your Jew mom for a day. Kiss my balls, asshole.
It's still not
totally
letting
didn't
me.
mean that, Kyle. I really, really want to go to
Still not
Castaneda.
letting me scroll.
I'm sorry we had that fight just now. You know, I mean, I said some things, you said some things, but I think it was good and we've moved past it. I'm not inviting you to Casa Bonita. Well,
I'm your Huckleberry.
All I wanted was this because it took me a lot of work to get to this, but you know, to continue now on this path of righteousness, you know you're at a party when Tom Cotton enters the room. Am I right? Tom Cotton's in the house. Cotton in the house. Hey, Cotton. Read Graham Platner and his Nazi tattoo. I knew more than a few infantrymen with tattoos. I bet you did, Tommy. We know about you, Tommy. We know what you're into, boy. But I didn't know any who had a tattoo honoring Nazi concentration camp guards like Platner. That's Tom Cotton. Cotton Man. That's the Cotton Man. I'm sorry. So Tom Cotton, of course, agreeing with openly racist, right-wing Tom Cotton calling Graham Platner a Nazi. And, you know, that's legit, of course, because he's definitely, you know, not trying to use this defense here, our favorite defense.
You're an anti-Semite.
Tom wouldn't do that. But let's see who else is attacking Platner for having a Nazi tattoo. Oh, it's this guy. And he's using the tried and true, you're a racist who, you know, is forsaking all your views if you support the guy who wants national health care and wants, you know, is against a certain, our greatest ally controlling the dialogue and all that. So this guy's angle is obviously a little more smug and fake than Cotton's, who's very out in the open apex stooge. This guy has to be a little more sly about it and pretend like he's on some social justice mission to stop the guy who, you know, wants to provide public health care and end wars. And God, I hate the Democrats. At least Cotton here. Tom Cotton! At least he's a well-known piece of shit. You know, this guy has to pretend that he's just like, I'm just defending, you know, against white supremacy or whatever you want to hear. So here's a Exhibit A. Well, before we get to that, this guy is doing the thing that Democrats did back in the day to any real progressive. This guy right here, the left. He's basically using the leftist thing as a bridge too far. Anyone who's accused of a racist can't be supported, even if the rest of their policies are very progressive and left. And this is, I said, I'm proud of you for admitting you're dumb enough to fall for this one over and over and over again, my guy. Congrats. And this is back from the primary when Jewish groups condemned Nazi flag display at Sanders' Arizona rally. You know, it's difficult to condemn a child of Holocaust survivors for being an anti-Semite, but what you can do is the guilt by association game. And so that's what they did with Bernie. They called his supporters violent misogynists and, oh, look, there's a Nazi at his rally. Oh, my God. We can't vote for that. Vote for Hillary, of course, because there's no Nazi flags at her rallies, guys. But I want to show you a good example of Platner's anti-Semitism at work. Exhibit A of Platner's anti-Semitism. And this is really gonna mess you up when you hear this. So buckle your safety belt, buckle up, because here we go.
Works hard enough to justify $1 billion, not in a world where I know people that have 3 jobs and can't even afford their rent. I refuse to believe. I refuse to believe that in a state like Maine, where people work as hard as we do here, that it is merely hard work that gets you that kind of success. We all know it isn't. We all know it's the structures, it's the tax code. That is what allows that money to get accrued. And that is also why we can get it back. Because the world that we live in today, is not organic. It is not natural. The political and economic world we have did not happen because it had to. It happened because politicians in Washington and the billionaires that write the policies that they pushed, they made this happen. They changed the laws.
That's insulting.
And they made it legal to accrue as much wealth and power as they have now. And we need to go make it illegal again.
That's insulting. That's insulting.
I forgot I had this one.
That's insulting.
Well, you know, of course, the only response to what Graham Platner said right there.
You're an anti-Semite.
But let's not stop with that. Let's keep moving here, because billionaires are a protected class, and I think that's racist. What he just said, definitely anti-Semitic. But here's Exhibit B of Platner being an anti-Semite, and this one's really gonna mess with your head because I hate to break this to you, but
you're an anti-Semite.
Because this is why liberals are calling Platner a Nazi. In a fundraising email, AIPAC called the views of Graham Platner and Abdul El Sayed a direct threat to the U.S.-Israel relationship.
You're an anti-Semite.
Am I right, folks? That is, you know, it's pretty clear that Graham Platner is a racist, white nationalist supremacist. And then this one right here, this is just anti-Jewish bigotry at its finest. I don't know what else to say, guys. Just listen to this anti-Semite talk for a minute. It's just really going to disgust you.
And what we need in this country is a clear political message about who is to blame. Because it isn't immigrants. It's not trans kids.
Wait, what? That is anti-Semitism at its finest. It's not immigrants and trans kids. It must be Jews.
Blame. Because it isn't immigrants. It's not trans kids. It's billionaires.
What?
It's corporations.
Wait a minute, Graham.
You're an anti-Semite.
It's Wall Street. It's private equity. It's Silicon Valley as it manipulates our feelings and commodifies our entire being. That is who all of our rage needs to be directed at. And the only way for us to do it is to find common ground with each other down here in the real world.
Yep, you see, only a Nazi would say that. Trans kids aren't your enemy. We need to unite against billionaires and corporations. I mean, guys, it's pretty clear this guy's tattoo is a sign that he's a Nazi.
You and me, ain't that America?
Because at the end of the day, the material needs of working people in the state of Maine are exactly the same. It doesn't matter who you voted for when the hospital closes. It doesn't matter if it's an R or a D or an I next to your name when you walk into a ballot booth, because the hospital closed.
What matters is that we elect someone who wants to funnel all your money to Israel.
It doesn't matter how you identify politically if your children have to leave this place because they can't afford to live there. Your community dies the exact same way, regardless.
So as you can see, that guy's a Nazi, and you need to vote for Susan Collins. And to sum this up nicely, your boy Rome here just ices this cake for us with this beautiful tweet that says, "Hey, Democrats, I don't know if you know, but trying to maintain the status quo means you're conservative. There's nothing progressive about that. You're welcome." Also, Graham Platner.
You're an anti-Semite.
You know what it is. You know what it is. It's time to move on to our next piece of work here called Operation Oops, I Shot Myself in the Dick. Now, some people have been calling this operation has been called many things. It's been called many things, many great things. I think if you were to ask Trump to describe this, I believe he would say something along these lines.
I've never seen anything like it. I've seen a lot of bad ones. I've gone to a lot of hurricanes, a lot of tornadoes. I've never seen anything like this. This is a bad one.
And the reason he would say that is because this is the current cost of the war, from Seth Harp. And as I said, a lot of people called it Operation Epic Epstein Fury. I was calling it Operation Epic Fail. This guy's calling it Operation Oops, I Shot Myself in the Dick, which I think is also a very accurate, title, especially at this point. So let's look at this. $1 billion every day at 1.2 billion. Actually, you heard that guy say that the Chinese train station cost 1.8 billion. So 2 days of this war could have built us a train station if we weren't, a country that's run by dick pigs. However, $1 billion a day for the stupidest military campaign in United States history, Operation Oops, I Shot Myself in the Dick. The U.S. has spent an estimated $71.8 billion on the Iran war, or $1.2 billion per day on average. Estimated U.S. war costs as of 28th February through 28th of April, 2026. And losses, wow. That's kind of a breakdown there of loss. $1.2 billion a day, making America great again.
America, fuck yeah! America!
Yay! This is my favorite move.
America! Yay!
So, it's looking like $1.2 billion is going to keep making America great again, because based on the most recent update that I saw about this, the ceasefire is pretty much a thing of the past. And here we are. This is from, I believe, Friday night, May 7th. Today's the 11th. So this is Friday. Trump dropping bombs on Iran, striking Bandar Abbas, Kashim Island. And Gen X Girl here says, this is huge news, and yet X's stupid algorithm only shows it to me now. This is now the third time the U.S. has attacked Iran in the middle of negotiations. That is just, that's how the U.S. rocks now. We are complete lying scumbags. And, yeah.
Yay!
So it looks like they started attacking again, and according to some reports, were allegedly hit back. Here is some additional footage because it looks like the attacks, and this is all alleged. You know, a lot of this stuff hasn't been confirmed, but it looks like some of these attacks were levied by UAE, and Iran has responded to it by hitting Dubai. And so again, this is kind of grainy footage. It's not, this is unverified stuff from people on the ground, but this is allegedly footage of Iran hitting back at Dubai. And as of Sunday morning, we had Trump giving an on the record comment through Truth Social. This was May 10th, yesterday morning, or yesterday afternoon around 12:30, as you can see. And what does Trump say here? He says, Iran has been playing games with the United States and the rest of the world for 47 years. There's that bullshit again. And then finally hit pay dirt when Barack Hussein Obama became president. He was not only good to them, he was great, actually going to their side, jettisoning Israel and all other allies. And this is what a insatiable dick pig Donald Trump is, that, you know, it just shows you if you even slightly do anything that represents America's interests over Israel's, which is what Obama did. He actually negotiated on behalf of America's interests and didn't just get down on his knees and lick Netanyahu's balls like Trump does. You're a terrible person. You're a terrorist, in fact. And this is, it's ridiculous. Anyone who buys this is a absolute retard of the highest order. But let's keep going. Jettisoning Israel and all other allies and giving Iran a major and very powerful new lease on life. Hundreds of billions of dollars and $1.7 billion in green cash flown into Tehran was handed to them on a silver platter. No, he gave their own money back to them. You absolute moronic tool. Everything Trump knows starts out like this. Every bank in D.C., Virginia, and Maryland was emptied out. It was so much money that when it arrived, the Iranian thugs had no idea what to do with it. So much money, in fact, that they took it all and they dumped it into a big swimming pool and swam around in it like Scrooge McDuck. Have you ever seen that show DuckTales? That's what these guys did. They swam around in it like Scrooge
You know
McDuck.
nothing about nothing. You fake news.
Hold on a second. I gotta. Here we go. Here we go. Obama gave Iran so much money that this is what it looked like when Obama, terrible Obama, gave Iran this money right here. This is how it looked when Iran got the money that Obama gave them. It looked just like this. They took all the money like Scrooge McDuck and they swam in it. That's what Iran did. The fucking Iran. Anyway. Iran's been playing games with the United States. So back to Trump. These thugs had no idea what to do with it. They'd never seen money like this and never will again. It was taken off the plane in suitcases and satchels, and the Iranians couldn't believe their luck. They finally found the greatest sucker of them all. Did I mention he's also black? In the form of a weak, stupid American president. He was a disaster as our leader, but not as bad as sleepy Joe Biden. For 47 years, the Iranians have been tapping us along, keeping us waiting, killing our people with their latest roadside bombs and destroying protests. Maybe we should get our people out of their region.
Trump. Maybe that's why you were elected, you retard. And recently wiping out 42,000 innocent unarmed protesters. 5 minutes ago was 30. You know, the millions of protesters that they've killed just keep piling up. They're laughing now at our great country as they swim in money like Scrooge McDuck. They'll be laughing no longer, I promise you, because that's what I've been promising for weeks, and it's going to happen. I warned them. It's coming. Also,
You're an anti-Semite.
So that's where we're at in the Iran war as of this past weekend. They're basically controlling the Strait of Hormuz, doing as they see fit. They have Russia and China behind them. The United States is in shambles, and Donald Trump's whining on Truth Social and pretending that he has anything in his arsenal that's going to change the dynamic. From everything that I've heard from legitimate military experts, it's over. There's nothing that they can do to really change the dynamic at this point. But they're going to keep bleeding, just like with these other wars before it, Afghanistan and Iraq. They're going to bleed the economy to the point of no return, and it's almost like they want that. And a lot of people say they probably do, but we'll see how things shake out. Glad I got that Scrooge McDuck reference crowbarred into that last segment. So this is our last segment of the day before some comedy clips. And this is a piece by Rick Beato that recently went viral for a lot of reasons. But a lot of people hate on Rick because he's a little bit of an older cat. And I don't think that a lot of people who were mad about this actually watched it. But he basically has a commentary here on how class and economics have affected music and the quality of music, and the actual, it's kind of about the economics of music. And he's not saying that no good music has come out. A big point of contention was how, so anyway, a big point of contention with a lot of his people were like, oh, hey, tons of good music has come out over the last 40 years. And that's true. He's not saying that good music hasn't come out. What he's saying is the landscape in 2026 is such that mostly rich kids dominate the charts. And there are plenty of working class bands, but it's much more difficult to make music and focus on music as a art form when you can't afford to live. And it used to be much easier for, aspiring musicians to kind of have a meager living while they were creating. And that's just not the case anymore. And that's kind of the case that he's making here. And there's a lot of cope from some well-intentioned people. But you look at someone, for example, like Billie Eilish, who I think is brilliant. I love her music and she's insanely talented, and so is her brother. But what is her background? Well, let's look at it. In fact, I was just this morning listening to her song Ocean Eyes, which I think is a great song. But I just want to show you just as an example. So here's Billie Eilish. Here's her Wikipedia. Billie Eilish. So let's go down to her early life. Billie Eilish, Pirate Baird O'Connell. It's a pretty, I love the pirate part. Was born in Los Angeles, California on December 18th, 2001. So she's my same astrological symbol. She's the daughter of actress and teacher Maggie Baird. Actress and teacher. Teacher. Okay. So look, here's Maggie Baird. Very familiar face. And then you look at her career and her discography here. Look at this. She's done Another World, As the World Turns, LA Law, Walker, Texas Ranger, Picket. She has a career spanning from the 80s all the way up to, recently. And recently is Billie Eilish's story. But again, this is not to say that, Billie Eilish sucks or is a Nepo baby or whatever because her mother is a wealthy actress, but just to say that Billie Eilish has a lot more freedom of movement as the daughter of an actress who has her mother's money supporting her than a kid who has to wash dishes at the fucking, local diner to pay for his lockout and rent every month. That kid has a lot less time to sit around and make music. And that's kind of the point that Mr. Beato here is making. So let's watch a little bit of this and talk about it. And feel free to chime in if you have anything to add here. This is about a 7-minute video. We'll finish this out.
Rick Beato. Okay, so this is just some observations that I've been making over the past couple weeks about where the music business is now and kind of where it was in 1994 when I moved to Atlanta when I was 32 years old. So the reason I moved down here was to try and find people to play with in a band and do my own music. There were music rehearsal spaces around town here that bands rehearsed at. There's probably about 4 or 5 of them. One of them was called Black Box. It had about 50 rooms or so. There's another one called Avatar that had a bunch of rooms, maybe about the same, with a couple of huge rooms that you could rehearse on a stage. There was another place called Metro that was near the Masquerade, which is actually in a different spot now, that my band rehearsed in, that probably had 35 different rehearsal spaces in. And there were a number of others. These were all full of bands that rehearsed all the time. So day and night, you can go in there. They're open 24 hours. You can go in and rehearse. This wasn't just Atlanta. This was every city. If you went to Seattle, like I did in 1992, there was a number of rehearsal spaces around Seattle that all those Seattle bands rehearsed in. But there were also rehearsal spaces in Phoenix and Los Angeles and New York City. Before I moved here in 1994.
I will say, I moved to LA in the late 90s, early 2000s, and played in a band. And we rented rehearsal spaces in multiple spots. We had one in the Valley in Van Nuys, and we also had one in Hollywood for a long time, Hollywood and Ivar, that Lincoln Park actually was in the same building as us and stuff. So this was a very common thing, just to say, and I could attest to that as someone who played in a rock band in the early 2000s.
I was living in New York, 93, 94, and I played in bands there, and I lived in the East Village. I lived on First Ave between 7th and St. Mark's. And how did I do that? Because I had a job as a bartender on a boat. And the money I made from that enabled me to not only pay for my rent, which you could never do today, but I also could go to practice spaces and practice with the 5 different bands that I played in, because they all had practice spaces in Manhattan. And then eventually, when you couldn't afford to do it in Manhattan, people went to Brooklyn. And now you can't do it in Brooklyn because that's too expensive. But the fact of the matter is that you could work a regular job and afford to do that. Like when I moved here to Atlanta, I worked as a music teacher in a store called Buckhead Music. I taught 50 students a week and made $500. And with that $500, I paid my rent, which was typically about $300-400 a month. I had roommates, and I paid for our rehearsal space. I chipped in with the other 3 guys in the band, and we also paid to go in and record. I became a producer in 1999. The first gigs that I did were local bands, and then I got some major label things. Like I did this band, Left Front Tire, that had a song on the American Pie 2 soundtrack. And then I got this band, Shinedown, that I did a few songs on their first record, which was a double platinum record. And eventually, over time, I did a few more major label records, but those records and budgets started to go away around 2005. After the financial crisis, 2008, rock music basically died around 2012. Right when Facebook and Twitter came online and we were in the social media era, full on. If you go back to the late 90s, you started seeing these boy bands, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, you saw Britney Spears, and then you had this whole, I guess we just call it manufactured music that had professional songwriters and producers that worked on music. And then that started to bleed into things that I produced because I was one of the people that did that. Why do I bring?
So he has more of an inside view here, but I also want to say that part of what changed the game, a big part, is technology. Just because it became cheaper to produce, like hip hop albums. I've talked before about John Mellencamp talking about how SoundScan changed the rap, made rap more popular than rock. But also this dynamic, I think, played a part. Someone mentioned how, and Rick, I want to let Rick finish here before I go too far into this, but I do think that, the ease of using a computer for beats and stuff and DJing, the rise of DJing and stuff, made it easier and cheaper for, you know, artists to show up at a club perhaps and play like some records and with a mic and rap or sing over, you know, records instead of having to haul drums and amps and the whole setup, you know. So I think that does play a part. But what he's striking on here, and I think why this was so widely talked about last week, is the class aspect of this. And he goes into a lot of detail here and kind of lays out some proof. So let's listen.
Bring all this up because now we're in 2026. When I do these top 10 countdowns on Spotify, I go back after I make the video and I look at the artists and I see what their background is. And invariably, the artists that are popular, almost all of them are from wealthy parents and work with professional songwriters. Now, having wealthy parents is not something new in the music business. Taylor Swift's dad, Scott Swift, invested $500,000, I think it was, into her record label, Big Machine, back when she first started. Go to nowadays, you look at people like Gracie Abrams. Her dad, J.J. Abrams, you know who he is. He's a famous producer and movie filmmaker. Her best friend is one of her.
I had no idea that I'm not a Gracie Abrams fan, but I had heard of her, and I never even made that connection that she's J.J. Abrams' daughter. So that on its own, like that's pretty crazy. But let's keep going.
Her best friends, I just was listening to Audrey Hobart. Audrey has a brother that is also a songwriter called Malcolm Todd, but his name is really Malcolm Todd Hobart. Audrey has a couple million monthly listeners on Spotify. Malcolm Todd has 23 million monthly listeners, but their father was the writer and producer for Scrubs and The Middle. Sabrina Carpenter's aunt was the voice of Bart Simpson. We can go on and on. Most of the people that make it in the music business now have parents that are famous, or that are in the film or TV business or music business, or they're really wealthy. Because only wealthy.
This reminded me too, Dave Grohl, his daughter just launched a music career too. I don't know if you've seen that. And she sounds good. You know, I'm not, no hate against her, but just to add to Rick's point here.
Wealthy people, unfortunately, for the most part, can focus on music and doing music as a career because they don't have to work. Now, they may have jobs and work, but they don't have the pressure of that. Not only that, but they have their parents that can put in the money to hire the biggest producers, engineers, mixers, and songwriters to come in and work with their kids. That doesn't mean that their kids don't have talent. Gracie Abrams is a great singer. I say this a lot of time, instruments don't play themselves, right? So you can be the child of someone famous and wealthy and also be an excellent musician. If you look back historically, bands like the Beatles, Black Sabbath, AC/DC, The Who, The Kinks, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Smashing Pumpkins, Oasis, The White Stripes, these are all working class bands that come from very humble beginnings and can tell stories based on their upbringing, something that rich people frankly can't do. If the people are not from wealthy families, then you can bet on the fact that if they're pop artists, they are signed to a publisher that's a famous producer. Because most of the big producers out there, I don't need to mention names, I've interviewed some of them on my channel. These pop producers have their own publishing companies, and they might have 100 songwriters that are signed to their publishing company. And why is that? Because they can afford to pay them $50,000, $100,000 advances to live, because the people need money to make their music, or you could say make their art, if you consider.
So what he's
art.
saying here, a lot of people miss this, is that a lot of the songwriters that come up in the ranks work under a bigger publisher who pays them in advance, you know, takes their publishing royalties, but pays them like a $50K, $100K advance every year so that they're free to sit around and tinker with a guitar or a piano and write songs. So the point he's making is a very class-driven point, and it's 100% correct. It's the same reason that people of lower incomes are being driven out of cities like LA and New York, and those cities are kind of like starting to crumble as a result of that because there's no working class infrastructure anymore to, you know, prop all this up. I'm gonna let Rick
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
There is no money in the music business like there was. Yes, people can make millions of dollars doing it, but it's such a small number of people that can do that. One of the things that most people won't tell you, big producers, big engineers, mixers, songwriters, is that they make a lot of their income through vanity projects with rich people. Billionaires that had bands when they were in high school, or kids of wealthy people. I did so much of this stuff.
There is a guy that I have dealt with in the metal world named Kurt Deimer. And no disrespect, Kurt Deimer is a great guy, very kind, very nice dude. But he's one of those dudes who has a bunch of oil money and wants to be a rock star. He has a tour bus. He has a PR agent. His music it's okay. You know, I'm not a huge fan, but this is a good example of like, this guy is opening for like Yngwie Malmsteen and like big artists because he has the money to buy himself into the game. And that is kind of what Rick is talking about.
Myself, this has been going on since the early 2000s. Once money from record deals started to disappear, that's what people were left with. So most of the things that you see out there that are developed by people are financed by parents of rich kids. If you just investigate people that are in the charts and go and look at their background, you will see that. You can put the names in the comments section of the people, but you will find that it's almost impossible to make it as a musician nowadays if you're young, unless you have rich parents. It's just my own observation. Love to know your thoughts. Hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.
Now, this made a lot of people mad. I noticed there was a lot of people coming at. And this person added, the reason everything seems so fake is because the working class has been squeezed out of the music business, journalism, TV,
hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato.
Production. So I want to say too, I agree with that. I think on a lot of levels. However, the internet has also enabled indie development. And that's a point that a lot of people in the comments were making, like, hey, still a lot of great music is coming out from working class people. The dynamics have just shifted, right? So someone pointed out another good example of this, the rise of hip hop, because hip hop is cheap and easy to make on a computer with a drum loop and a microphone. And so the working class vibe shifted to hip hop, which is why hip hop became more popular than rock. But I think the dynamics are shifting back in that now production quality and AI and all this stuff. I mean, I don't think people want AI music anymore. You know, the last several years of pop music have been so processed and clean and computer driven that I do see a kind of in the zeitgeist, a backlash against unnatural sounds and people kind of reverting more to like classic rock, like, you know, Zeppelin, classic metal. I see a lot of bands I used to listen to that were almost kind of underground as a kid, like really rising up with the youth through TikTok and social media. A band like Typo Negative, for example, which is a gothic, like vampire sounding band. A lot of like new generations of kids are discovering that, and it's great music that's naturally made. It's not AI. They might use drum machines on some of their stuff, but, you know, pound for pound, it's heartfelt, you know, written music. And I think that's where people are veering back to. And I guess my point is the production quality has gotten, you know, the cost of getting good mics and having a DAW on your, you know, laptop and being able to record drums and amps and all that stuff as a rock musician is getting better and better and cheaper to the point where it's almost going to be like rap was, you know, for the last 20 years, where it was very cheap and easy. I've said this before, rap was kind of like the punk rock of the 2000s for me. I got into underground rap. Company Flow was a good example, or Anticon. If you're an old underground hip hop head, you know these groups, Soul and Atmosphere. Even Atmosphere, Slug was in part of Anticon. So all these, Sage Francis, who else? You know, Merce, Living Legends, Hieroglyphics, all these underground hip hop groups of the 2000s were kind of like, and Hyro was around before the 2000s, so was Koflo, like late 90s. But that was punk rock to me in the 2000s. I remember rolling around in the early 2000s on the bus, listening to Company Flow and Anticon on my headphones and thinking that was the hardest shit around. At the time it was, and that was what was being produced by poor working class musicians versus, you know, the Backstreet Boys and the kind of like clean, processed, synthesized pop that was starting to dominate the charts. And then you had the rock that was dominating the charts in that era was like Limp Bizkit and Puddle of Mud and Disturbed and this kind of like post new metal, post grunge, rehashed crap, you know. So anyway, I think Rick is making a lot of good points, but let me know what you think. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to this dynamic, and also, you know, the people with money, the charts, like what are the charts even today? I think a lot of the reasons you see Taylor Swift and, you know, Billie Eilish and these people in the charts is because, yeah, they have the bandwidth and the money to market themselves better to where more people see them, which affects the charts. And maybe even some of it's botted, you know, not all of it, but I'm sure a lot of it is. I come from that digital ad world where that's what people do to inflate their numbers. So let's close out today with a couple of funny videos. We're going to start with Trump meeting aliens, and I'm going to have to ride the mute button on this so I don't get a copyright strike because it does have copyrighted music. But this was pretty funny and worth a look. One of the funnier political AI videos of the week, of course, generated with AI. Enjoy this.
Got punched in the face by the. You got punched in the face by the Fresh Prince.
Tonight, history was made on the White House lawn as humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial life.
Name is Zorg. He is an extra cholesterol.
President sat down for what was meant to be a historic.
His name is Zorg. He's an extra.
Quickly realized
he's here just to fuck with me. Putin, China.
I got to mute the copyrighted music, but this isn't AI great?
I saw the documentary. Independence Day.
He's levitating. This guy.
Quiet! Zorg the alien caused a chaos of destruction before sabotaging the president's teleprompter.
Shit.
Destruction before sabotaging the president's teleprompter.
America's so shit. The shittest. Zigzags, Pineapple Moon, Zorg is life, Earth sex.
He is currently missing.
Brilliant. Brilliant stuff. So let's just trying to trace the person who made this from Simo. Is this the person who made this? So just to give credit where credit's due. And then we got, of course, Trump in his hoe outfit. If you've never seen this is good. And I think cut that, but that's Trump in his hoe outfit. And then this one, since we're equal opportunity bipartisan offenders here, here's one that makes fun of the Democrats and what they are. And this one's actually really good. I think you're going to enjoy this one quite a bit. Let's watch. This is the Democrats versus the Republicans. Michael Myers is the Republicans, the guy in the pink shirt, the Democrats.
Hi, can I have an ice vanilla latte? Michael, do you want anything? I think he's okay. Okay, bye. Okay, now let's inhale. Okay, same time next week, girls, if I'm still alive. Please, Michael. Sorry, I'm late.
There you have it. That's very brilliantly done, and that was done by, what are these guys called? The Logically Left. Pissed Off Bear posted this. I don't know if he actually did that. Whoever did that was, it didn't have a Logically Left. Why am I not following that guy? Followed back. And then last but not least, we're going to close out with this one because this is a politically relevant clip from Kill Tony. And I think Tony's the best. Tony's one of the best shows on television right now. If you're not watching Kill Tony, you're missing out. But this is Tony at his finest, and a great way to close out the show. Thank you before we do this, I just want to say thank you again for all of you who joined me on the regular when I jump on this soapbox. I totally fucked up yesterday. And as soon as I did a check on my video yesterday, I went, you dumb asshole, you didn't turn on your mic. And there's nothing that bothers me more than bad sound on videos. So this is the recut. Thanks again for joining me. If you joined me twice, pretty much the same show, just twice. The old one's deleted. But again, thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this clip of Tony, and I will see you at the very latest next Sunday, one way or another. And stay safe out there. Here's Tony. Have a great rest of your week.
Make some noise if you've been to a bar mitzvah.
Okay, what are we doing
Okay,
here?
sorry.
Let's just get into it. Answer my question.
I'm so sorry.
Make some noise if you've done some Yiddish shit. What the fuck? Come on,
Oh my
stick with the thing here. Make some noise if you like saving money. Make some noise if you like over-retaliating in a war with barely a competitor. Who loves destroying civilian lives? Make some noise! Oh, yeah. You're in a little truth chamber tonight.
Yeah, no, I feel that.
It's all jokes. It's a comedy show. Jewish people would never do any of those things. You guys would never do that to Palestine. All right.
I think there's